Hey everybody, Chad here, just apologizing in advance for a bit of audio issues with Kev and Ben. Best bit was that they talked a bunch of smack about Apple a couple weeks back, and their PCs didn't really come to the party in this one, so I thought that was pretty damn funny. Anyways, on with the show.
I am the Wolverine, along with Jarhigo and C-Lab Forever. This is the Blah Podcast. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, Kevin Moeller. With me, as always, my faithful companions, Chad.
Hey, you guys.
And Ben.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Kids, what are we talking about this week?
So, we're talking about Star Wars, but we're not, talking about individual movies. We're talking about the whole thing.
And we're not hating on Star Wars. Or we are, but in a different way.
Probably there'll be some hate. It won't, there'll be some hate.
Intellectual hatred, let's say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to bitch and gripe about Star Wars tonight, people.
There you have it, folks. Ben said it best. Go ahead, kick it off, brother.
Look, the Star Wars universe is incredible. George Lucas did a crazy good job creating such an awesome environment for all of these stories to take place in. But I think the stories that have been told are not that great. So I think that the Star Wars saga needs to die.
Wow.
And it's a bit dramatic, but I saw a couple of things recently that were pretty interesting that we'll get into, like changing the order that you watch the movies, and also that Lucas had his ass saved by his colleagues when they were working on the film together.
I'm going to advocate for the folks at home in this episode. For the folks at home, explain what you mean by the saga needs to die. Let's start there. Just give us the short gun.
Yeah. So I define the Star Wars saga as the thread of the Skywalkers in the Star Wars universe. And it's the only thread that's been explored really in the universe. There's been very little other stuff that's been explored, and I think the universe is so amazing that we need to just put the Star Wars thing, the Skywalker thing, to bed, and pick up on some other threads. There's so many things to look at that I think would just be incredible.
That reminds me of Kylo Ren. That I saw this great meme. I wish I could take credit for it, but it said that Kylo Ren's personality was based on the fans that complain about every movie, and it's hauntingly accurate. It's really funny, and when I saw it, I downloaded it to my phone, and I've laughed at it many, many times, but the more I think about it, it's kind of exactly right on, don't you think?
Totally. And the more I think about it, the more I see myself in that bitchy Star Wars fan, and the more I kind of see myself growing out of being a bitchy Star Wars fan and being like a goddamn adult, and I can think about it more critically and less emotionally.
Right.
I'd have to agree with that, yeah. Although I still do get rather curmudgeonly occasionally.
I do too. Yeah. It holds a really special place, and that's fine. But it seems like the people that are creating Star Wars now, or at least the people that are in charge of Star Wars now, are afraid of pissing off the fans to the point where they're just making the most vanilla movies ever and not taking any risks.
I agree.
And I think that's a huge stumbling block.
I totally agree.
I think it's a shame when you realize that you still care about Star Wars, but your only indication that you care is that you feel like compelled to jump in and complain about it or bitch about it or
talk about the bad things.
Yeah.
I described my concept of the saga and how there's different ways to approach the Star Wars saga. I feel as though the Skywalker clan is the Star Wars saga as it stands currently, whether it's the Luke side of it or the Anakin side of it, depending on what argument you buy into. It seems as though the entire saga is defined as the Skywalkers. Does that resonate? Does that seem to you guys like it's the saga, or do you feel as though the universe is the story or whatever, and the Skywalker thing is just like a whatever?
It's funny. I when you brought this up in the pregame, I really had honestly never thought about it before, and I'm so glad you found that funny, Ben. Hang
on, I'm just trying to find it now. Where did you put it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it, man.
If this stays in, this will be worth it.
I didn't think either of you would see it while we were doing it. I just want to say that made me laugh so hard. I was laughing like you're laughing now when I saw that. My stomach hurt. It was so funny to me.
Oh my God. Oh my God! We will totally throw something up. We'll throw this picture up on Twitter or Reddit or wherever.
Definitely.
Whenever this comes out, but there is a Dunlop back support. I'll.
You know what, Ben? He's gonna get it in a second because it takes longer because he's across the planet, and then
No, I got it.
Oh, he did get
That's
it.
That's amazing.
Okay. I'm being mischievous. So anyway, look, listen. I'm still.
Han Solo, huh? You gotta love it.
Okay. All right, I'm over it. That is really funny.
Yeah, but you're not. That's the best part. So, Chad, I really never I'm gonna just keep talking. So, you know, I never really thought of that until you brought it up to me, and I don't know. You know, here's what I'm thinking right now. The universe, part of me just wants to say, you know what, the story is about Luke, but they just dragged it on too long. Like, the Luke story, that's what it was about. That's what started the whole thing, and that's fine. But they should have just maybe started moving in another direction a while ago. Because look at all these films, man. It's 2019, all right? I started watching these films, or the first one, in the theater in 78. That was a long time ago. So, you know, if they had kept going and wrapped it up at the end of the 80s, and okay, now we're moving on, I think we all would have been better off. So that's sort of my...
And he wanted to make them all back in the day, just never did it.
Well, I know, and I know that he was sort of constrained, or he wanted to wait until the technology was there to make it look the way he wanted to, and I understand all that stuff, man. And really, I understand him, going back and changing the ones that he did.
Nope.
I totally get that. I've gone back and remastered...
Hard disagree.
Well, you know what? I've gone back and remastered podcasts that I've done, radio dramas that I've done, and it's this is what I originally wanted. So there's a part of me that totally respects that. The part that doesn't respect it is the fact that so many people just liked it the way it was. And it, you know what I mean? So he could have done that for himself and just left them alone and just had his own copies and watched them and been happy, whatever.
And not made it so that you can't watch the original theatrical cuts even if you want to.
Well, that's annoying. And I think, yeah, that's really annoying. Really, really annoying, actually. But at any rate, so that's my first thought about it is that right there. And the other part of it is that, yeah, there's a whole, and it's sort of the next logical thing from what I was saying is that, yeah, there's a whole universe out there. Go explore it, man. I was always I would always see those films and see the detail stuff, the background stuff. And I'd be like, where is that guy from? What is his story? What is going on here? You know, because those films were so rich in visual detail.
Yeah. And what does the saga, the idea of the quote unquote Star Wars saga, resonate with you, Benny? What does it bring up with you?
Well, at first, I was into it. But I think like everybody else, it seems like something that's just being dragged on. And really, I just have to, this has already been brought up, but what I would say is what I've come to realize what I love about the Star Wars movies is the aesthetic, the music, and the sets and the costumes and the ships and the guns and the lightsabers and it's all the artifacts and all the things from the world, the sound effects, bent bursts, sound effects, all that stuff is what I really like about Star Wars. And I could care less about this the Skywalker Saga. It's just not interesting to me anymore. I mean, I feel like they did it in 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't need to add to it afterwards either.
Agreed. And the story itself is just old. Those tropes, those ideas are just, they're old. It's as old as dirt. I mean, it's nothing amazing. It's like Avatar. There's nothing amazing about that story. It's everything else that's amazing about Avatar.
It's Dances with Wolves. With episodes 4, 5, and 6, you have the middle of a trilogy of trilogies. And what could have happened is the original trilogy is Skywalker. The prequel trilogy is a completely different set of characters set in the universe that sets the stage for the Skywalker thing. So it could even be like the prequel trilogy attempts to be a establishment of the Empire, but it does a piss poor job, and it's too directly generationally connected, I think. So like it could have been like
you see it all coming a mile, like you know what's going to happen.
Exactly, and then
you see it coming a mile. You know that Anakin Skywalker is going to become Darth Vader, and it's not as interesting of a story. You already know what's going to happen. It's not like
Correct.
you don't know what the fuck is going to happen.
No, everybody was there just to watch like the in between bits, man. We knew what the ending was.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could just go watch like the animated Clone Wars series, and you would kind of get that effect, you know, like Anakin Skywalker.
Maybe the Clone Wars as a movie is the original, episodes 1, 2, and 3. You know, I don't know.
Or no, maybe even just the fact that it's an animated series is a great way to go about it.
Sure,
it's
different
like
medium.
You get to learn a little bit about Anakin Skywalker, and you get to see him being a Jedi and fighting in the Clone Wars, and you find out that he has a Padawan. Yeah. And you get to see Obi-Wan Kenobi, young, and like it kind of does the same job, but it's way more interesting of a story. You're not talking about Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader. You're talking about Anakin Skywalker being a Jedi in the midst of a war.
Yeah,
it's a far more interesting story.
The fact that that it's all spoiled means that the theatrical release order versus the episode 1 through 9 order, there actually is like a difference in how you watch the thing. And I think talking a little bit about the order that you see the movies is kind of an interesting place to explore how the saga was actually told. I read a blog post by this uber nerd dude who I have huge respect for, the 10,000 word treatise he wrote on this, but he created a thing called the machete order. And it's a different way to watch the movies coming from the perspective of someone who's never seen it before. And so a super quick explainer is you can watch them in release order, like the years they came out, or you can watch them in episode order. And George Lucas intends for you to watch it in episode order. So starting with episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the prequel, and then going on to 4, 5, and 6 of the original, what we consider the original trilogy, and so on. Versus, the way we watched it, which is episodes 4, 5, and 6 in our childhood, and then the prequels, which however you feel about it, whatever. And so for us who watched the original trilogy and then the prequels, we knew all of the stuff that was going to happen. But for someone who has never watched any of them before, if they watch episodes 1, 2, and 3, a lot of the biggest surprises in episodes 4, 5, and 6, like Star Wars, Empire, and Return of the Jedi, get spoiled. Like you learn all of the stuff that is like a holy crap moment. Like you learn that Anakin is Luke's dad. You learn that Luke and Leia are brother and sister in the most like just in passing kind of ways. So that the whole 6 movies just kind of don't have any tension. And it's just kind of like you're watching a documentary instead of watching a story that has tension and interesting, twists and turns. And so this guy talks about what he calls the machete order, which is watching Star Wars and then Empire, which then leaves you on a cliffhanger. Then going back and watching episodes 2 and 3, which kind of establishes the Anakin to Vader thing. Skipping episode 1 because it doesn't have a ton of relevance, and the article that we'll link to talks a lot about that. We don't need to get into it. So you've got Star Wars Empire cliffhanger, 2 and 3 establish Anakin, and then Return of the Jedi, which is resolving all of the various cliffhangers and threads. And you get minimal spoilers, minimal issue, and it weaves the movies together into a really interesting thing. And I just thought it was an interesting approach to watching the movies. And his major argument is that it makes the story about the story of Luke as opposed to the story of Anakin. So I thought that was an interesting way to think about it, and I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Prioritizes 4, 5, and 6, and uses 2 and 3 as sort of like a flashback in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And it just seemed like a clever way to do it.
What it does, both of you are right, but it also prioritizes the viewer for the viewing experience, man.
Yeah, great point.
You watch it like that. Like I'm just sitting here thinking about it while you're saying it, and it really allows you to get the max amount of information with the minimal amount of spoilage, and then you're happier.
It's better storytelling.
And who doesn't want to be happy when they're watching a movie? Like that's the whole idea. Is like you want to watch a film or a series of films. You want to escape and you want to enjoy it, man. And it's like that's great, bloody brilliant, man. Actually.
And if Machete Order, and if you buy into the idea of Star Wars, the current Star Wars saga being the story of Luke, now's the time to talk about it, because in the last movie, Luke's dead. Spoiler alert, but. So we don't even need an episode 9 because the Star Wars saga is dead. Like it's over. Luke's story's been told. It's done. We can move on. And I get a funny feeling, especially now that Carrie Fisher is dead, unfortunately, that the next movie is probably just going to be set up for the ongoing universe, and it's probably going to be very much repetitious, very much a repetition of everything else we've already seen, and probably will be similarly just vanilla.
It probably will, but I hope it won't be.
I do too. I really do too.
Yeah.
But what else can it be other than just tying up all the threads and saying, here's all the new people that'll do the same thing with different faces?
It was clearly supposed to be Leia's movie, right? I mean,
I think so, yeah.
They set it up to be Leia's movie, and, tragically, Carrie Fisher died.
It's such a shame, man. I reckon...
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like, nothing... It's so silly to say that it's a shame she died because I want to see her in a movie. Like, it's a shame she died because she died. But the loss to the Star Wars universe, because she is the strong, one of the strongest, if not the strongest character and hero in the film, is just such a tragedy from a filmmaking perspective. Like, obviously, the fact she died is horrible, but...
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to see that movie,
Yeah, 100%.
And I feel like now they have to change that.
One second here, guys. It's important to point this out. Like, we're going to just go outside of Star Wars for 1 second. Her mother, Debbie Reynolds, was an icon of American film and acting, and she died the next day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we didn't lose just one. We lost two. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's such a tragedy, man. I think you're right, Ben. I think that your view that the movie was going to be Leia's movie was spot on. Episode 7's Han's movie, he dies. Episode 8's Luke's movie, he dies. Episode 9, I think pretty clearly would have been Leia's movie, and she would have died, and it would have been a great final chapter in the entire series, and we could have moved on. And now that she's unfortunately not around and has passed away, who knows what we're going to see? And it wouldn't surprise me at all if it just turns into a 2-hour fan service movie where we watch a mashup of the original trilogy again with the same characters again, and and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression that it's going to be they're going to have to skip ahead to the future, right?
Maybe
they're going to have to invent something that happened to Leia, and then they're going to have to move forward from that point. Whereas I don't think that's what they were intending to do. I don't know how else they would approach it.
I just feel like they painted themselves into such a weird corner where the original trilogy is a small underdog upstart rebellion ends up somewhat winning the day with ups and downs, and then the new trilogy is the rebellion that has won the day didn't win the day, and now they're losing, and then now they're even a smaller upstart rebellion. Like, I don't understand why it needs to be redone.
I know. I don't get that. That was dumb.
Totally again. Like now we're the end of this episode 8. Luke dies, and now they're like one group of 10 people in a ship, and it's the rebellion, and they're going to take on 10,000 planets. Like, it seems like they've painted themselves into such a brutal corner. I just do not get it.
Well, not only that, but they're resetting what we've already just seen. Like, Force Awakens came out, and I was like, it started off great, and I love the way J.J. Abrams did all the filming and the cinematography and all that was great. But then as soon as they introduced the planet-sized death weapon, I was just like, really, man? I mean, come on, dude. It's been how many years, and this is the best storyline you can come up with? Is another ultimate device, but this time it's the size of it's built into an actual planet, instead of being a fake planet. And it's like, no, just no. Like, why? Why was that? That was stupid.
I just wish they would steal the entire plot from another movie rather than stealing the plot of their own movie.
I know, right? I don't know. I think that was dumb. And then we had yet another band of rebels scrapping around, it's like, just ho-hum, whatever. We've already seen that, dude. Last Jedi at the very least made an attempt to do take it in a different direction, which was, I do applaud that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a good segue into the idea that making movies is such a huge collaborative thing that it seems as though a lot of the best bits of the Star Wars story were crafted by people other than George Lucas, and or they influenced him to the point where they convinced him to tell the story in a certain way. And as a result, because it was an actual collaboration, the original trilogy is super solid. And the prequel trilogy being only him, I think fell quite flat. Like, he wasn't the only one that did anything, but he certainly was like a dictator in the sense that every decision was his, as opposed to, you know, being a young filmmaker who hadn't made a ton of movies and potentially being able to be convinced to do things by his colleagues. You fast forward 20 years and he's this legendary dude, and he's just going to do the prequel trilogy however the hell he wants. And I think that the results speak for themselves. They fell flat. And then he passes on and he passes the universe on and sells it to Disney, and they, I think, are afraid of trying new things for fear of not printing billions of dollars, and they're just repeating the same tropes over and over. So I think like the collaborators are what saved the best parts, what created the best parts of Star Wars.
I don't think I thought of it at the time when the newest set of movies dropped. I didn't think of it at the time because I think I was probably just excited to see another Star Wars movie. It had been a while. I was hopeful. But did we really need to see stormtroopers anymore? Right. Or wedge-shaped, triangle-shaped Star Destroyers, or, like it has been said, another approximation of a Death Star. No, they could have just come up with some new shit. They should have just come up with some new shit, right? Some new... Yeah. Anyways.
No, I'm with you 100%. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it was so disappointing that they basically rehashed the original story. I mean, Christ, the movie starts on a desert planet, just like the first one. And the thing that's funny is that, like, I mean, we're talking about this so after the fact, sort of. I mean, this part of it anyway. But like, I don't remember, and I could be wrong, but like, I just feel like nobody was talking about that when The Force Awakens came out. Like, everybody was like, "Oh my God, new Star Wars movie, awesome, man! I'm just seeing so many." But
yeah, like, I think we were all in the same boat with that, though. Like, we all had that. We're all like hopeful, and we're all just. I think it takes that long to digest it. To be honest.
So I think too, it turned into like a Voldemort kind of situation. It was like the who shall not be named. Like, we're not going to talk about the plot being exactly the plot of the original film. Oh, and the third film. Like, you know what I mean?
The plot or the complete lack of a plot?
Both.
I don't know if you guys managed to have a look, but I shared a YouTube video called "How Star Wars Was Saved in the Edit." This guy named David Welsh put this together, or wrote this video, and it's a video that talks about how George Lucas showed an early cut to like Steven Spielberg and a bunch of other luminaries at the time of the original Star Wars movie, and showed it to them, and they were just like, "What, dude? That was pretty shit," and gave him a bunch of notes. And George Lucas's wife at the time, along with the other editors, managed to restructure the movie in a significant way, and as a result, the movie just plays way better. And I feel it seems like the video talks about how George worked with them and they all managed to polish the turd and make it into something great, which then gave them the ability to make the future movies. But I personally feel, and have no evidence to back this, but I personally feel that the people around George Lucas were able to convince him to change things in such a way that the movie turned out better than it would have had he had carte blanche in making all these decisions. And I think the prequel trilogy, again, like, really shows that what happens when George Lucas has ultimate decision making. It was a super interesting video.
Yeah, right on. I'll have to check that out for sure. I mean, yeah.
Well, I'll put it in the show notes or whatever. Benny, you said you had a chance to see it.
Yeah, and I'd watched it before. I think Lucas. We'll get back. This is me getting back to what I had said. There's something to Lucas, and yes. I think Lucas. Ralph McQuarrie did like all of this concept art, but that was closely tied in with. I may be mistaken, but memory serves me properly. That was closely tied in with Lucas describing sort of from Lucas's vision, basically, like his idea for the universe. That's where those original concept drawings came from. So I guess Lucas's vision for what it's supposed to look like and all of that, like, we can kind of give him that one, right? Like,
for sure. Absolutely.
that universe, the aesthetic of the universe that we love is really, he's really responsible for that. And it's kind of like the story that he's fallen short on.
Yeah,
right?
And the collaborators have seemed to be able to make the story better.
Yeah, let me create the most amazing universe ever for stories to happen in, and then let me just write the most abysmal story possible.
Absolutely.
To focus on and take place. And it's like, just get away from that fucking story. Let's go to the cantina and see what that dude with the crazy bug eyes is up to. Like what is his life like?
Well, remember the comparison I drew when we were talking about this before, Ben? Like how, when you take a look at Star Trek, like from the original series, Next Gen, DS9, Enterprise, Voyager, the whole thing, man, it's like the writing was so good, man.
Yeah.
It was always amazing. And it's not that good writing makes, is the end all be all, but you need other parts of the process to be good. But it's very important. It's the foundation probably of, what makes good storytelling, certainly in a visual medium. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think that the ability of George Lucas to create a universe as a visionary is evident, and his collaboration with Ralph McQuarrie and all the other people that helped, bring it to life is a great point, Ben. And I totally agree that he's a visionary, has been able to create something incredible, and I also agree that it seems pretty damn clear that he's a bad storyteller. Like, it's okay that he's not good at telling stories. It's totally okay.
That's fine.
Maybe he's a good director. Maybe he's a good creator and a visionary, but he was lucky enough to surround himself with people that are good at storytelling, and they were super. I am so thankful that they were able to convince him to tell the story in a different way, which resulted in a better movie.
Yeah.
Because the prequel trilogy is just the most boring goddamn thing in the world.
Well, certainly it certainly is the way we saw it. Like, I'm sort of playing to what you're talking about the machete order. Like, yeah, it was because we saw it the way we saw it in theaters.
But if you watch it in theatrical order, it's just if I had never watched Star Wars before, now in 2019, or even when I was like 18, 19 years old, if you had showed me episode 1, 2, and 3, I probably wouldn't have watched episodes 4, 5, and 6, because episodes 1, 2, and 3 is kind of like, yeah, it's all right. It's like a whatever sci-fi series. It's kind of like point, you watch season 1 of some sci-fi show on the Sci-Fi Channel, and then you stop watching the rest of the seasons because you didn't really dig it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. I do know what you mean. Yes, I'm totally with you.
I don't know. I just thought it was interesting to switch the order up.
I think, so I remember Empire really well.
Oh my God.
Right.
It's so good.
My parents took me to see A New Hope when I was like 4 years old. And I remember the characters, and I remember the universe, and I remembered like all the stuff, but I didn't really grasp what the story was about at 4, I don't think.
Same here.
It wasn't until later that I finally actually rewatched A New Hope, which is great. But it's like my first 2 movies really were Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Same.
And I kind of went back, and like a buddy of mine had like the, HBO at the time or whatever, and A New Hope was on, and I was like, oh, all right, now I get it. And then it was just years and years, and then the other stuff came out. And I kind of had a similar thing with the new movies. I liked them at first, and at first I was just happy to see something and hopeful, and then
those hopes were dashed.
More and more.
And then the disappointment set in, Ben, and then your life was ruined. I mean, right?
Yeah, life's over.
No, life wasn't ruined, but
I'm kidding.
I remember that I went to see the Phantom Menace, and I fell asleep.
Yeah, there you go. Enough said.
I was like, kind of like woke up at the end, and I was like, oh, yeah.
And what needs to be said out loud is that one of the largest sci-fi fans that I've ever met in my life fell asleep.
Yeah. Wow. You're right.
Like, if a massive sci-fi fan falls asleep in a movie, it says something about that movie. Like, I'll watch the crappiest sci-fi movie and make it all the way through and won't fall asleep.
At the time, I thought, like,
True.
I don't know, like I was just having a nostalgia overload, and I was feeling so cozy and happy and comfy that I had fallen asleep.
Right.
But, come to realize all these years later that it was just not entertaining at all.
And you weren't missing anything. Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, if you take out the, I'm sure other people will have a different opinion about this, but if you just take Jar Jar out of the first film, Phantom Menace, it's really good, man. Liam Neeson, He's really good. He lends a lot to that, man.
I need to watch episode 1 again. It's been 15 plus years just because I hated it. So that's one of the key points in that Machete Order blog post, is that removing episode 1, not because he hates it, but removing it just because it doesn't push the Skywalker story forward, the Luke Skywalker story forward, has the added benefit of completely cutting Jar Jar, and Jar Jar Binks is only in like 2 or 3 minutes of the second film. So it like succeeds in just cutting him out completely, which is just like, okay, I'll take that as a bonus, because I think that the Jar Jar as a character is the best possible example of how merchandising just destroyed modern cinema, in the sense that, like, from what I understand, Lucas wasn't in the Directors Guild, and they wanted him to be in the Directors Guild, and he said, not fuck off. And as a result, they blacklisted him, and he went out and made Star Wars and released it. And because of the toys, he was able to make so much money that he could fund the other Star Wars movies. I could be misremembering, but just pretty much in a nutshell.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
But as a result of that success, he was able to finance everything, and that's great. But then relying on merchandising and writing in characters for 2-year-old kids to giggle about in a film in the later trilogies and later movies, I think has taken what was a great thing and financed the original trilogy and just like blew it and just overdid it.
I agree. Let me just back up what I just said. I said I agree with you. You're exactly right. The way I understood that story is that nobody was interested in the film, and nobody was interested in owning a piece of the film. And because he had all of the rights to it, he got all of the money from, you know, the film grossed or whatever, the film netted, and then the toy sales as well. And that's why he was able to finance his entire empire.
And that's fantastic that he was able to finance the rest of the original trilogy on that. It's just that falling into that same trap was just it was a big trap that they fell into, and the Jar Jar kind of toy bullshit took so much away from the prequel trilogy. It just skewed the reason they were making it. They weren't making it to tell a story. They were making it to sell toys, sell McDonald's Happy Meals.
Right. And there's also like an annoying sort of formulaic thing that started to happen with all of the films, even Rogue One, which was like, in my opinion, it goes the first 3, then Rogue One, and that's it. You know, like Solo had some good elements. Ben and I agreed on that we were talking the other day, whatever. But those are the 4 films, right?
I have a quick thought to throw in about episodes 1, 2, and 3. It is a 3-part origin story, and just not a very interesting origin story. If you've already seen 4, 5, and 6, you know it. So they could have just made episode 3 have some like flashbacks to the rest of it, and it would have been fine. You know, like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi was outstanding. I thought he was great. I thought he was really channeling Alec Guinness in a way, and doing him a service.
Very much like Carl Urban did with with McCoy. Yeah,
McCoy, totally.
Oh, totally.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, absolutely. So that really stuck out to me, but you know, there were a lot of really great players in those movies I keep calling them the first 3, but we don't want to call them the first 3, right? We'll call them episode 1, 2, and 3. They were great, you know, people were really good, and some people were really good in them, and they had some great parts. Just the overarching story blew.
And we're finding ourselves in a similar position. Like, I feel as though the new trilogy is reasonably well done, reasonably interesting characters, interesting character arcs, interesting elements to all the movies, but just the major story is just rinse and repeat. It's just rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat.
Well,
over
that's
and over and over.
That's a great segue, Chad. Into I remembered what I was going to say. Like, is that because that was sort of what Ben started to say a few minutes ago. Is it's like, you know, the origin story was a crappy origin story. It was like because we already knew it, and they just keep repeating the same thing and using the same story elements. And what I was starting to say was that there's all these formulaic little things that you're starting to see in every single movie. Like every single movie now, there's a cute new robot in every movie, you know. Or even in Rogue One, you had K2SO, who was awesome, arguably stole the show. Alan Tudyk is an amazing actor, and he also played Sonny in iRobot. Ben, you know that, and you know. But that's the sort of thing. There's always like a cute robot, and then there's some cute little cuddly creature somewhere, like those little penguin creatures in Last Jedi. You know, I mean, it's just like enough already, man. You know,
I mean, the droid in the latest Star Wars Solo movie was named L337. Like, fucking gamer elite speak. Like, seriously, do we really need to have all this cheesy Easter egg bullshit?
How did I not notice that?
And who was that? Was that
That was Brienne of Tarth, whatever, wasn't it?
Right, who also played Captain Phasma.
Phasma, who was a great character. I think a Phasma movie would be interesting. I feel like a lot of like the B-roll characters would make great movies. You know, like everyone's always salivated over a Boba Fett movie, which got shit canned.
I know, which never materialized.
Yeah, which it's never going to, apparently.
Well, we already know the origin story of Boba Fett, so who cares? Like, that got ruined, so you know what I mean?
He even ruined that. Like, that got tied into the whole thing, and it's like...
Now you sound like a Star Wars fan, Ben. Keep going.
Yeah, that's it. You know when, like, the emotion comes into the voice, you're like, goddamn Boba Fett. It's just like, oh my God, we're such nerds. Oh well, whatever. I embrace my nerddom.
No, that's how Kylo Ren came into being. So
yeah, exactly.
Keep going. We're making more Kylo Ren.
To be honest, man, I really like Kylo Ren as a character. I think he's one of the best parts of this new trilogy. That may be controversial to you guys or whatever, but I think a lot of people... There's like a faction of people that like the Kylo Ren whingy teenage angstiness, and then a lot of people that don't like it in the thing. And I personally am a fan of the fact that he's a bitchy teenager. I think a bitchy teenager that turns to the dark side is an interesting exploration of like the dark side and whatnot. I think he's a great foil to Rey's Zen Buddhist monk desert scavenger thing.
Desert rat.
In terms of the first movie... Yes. In terms of the second movie, I don't know. Like, his character becomes more and more confusing to me. His motivations are they don't make sense to me. Like, I don't know. I don't get why he is who he is and why he's doing what he's doing. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I hope they resolve that in the third movie. One of the things I appreciated, one of the opportunities I saw in episode 8, Last Jedi, was that Rey almost flipped to the dark side. And or Kylo almost flipped to the light side. So, like, there would have been an interesting opportunity there for the director or storytellers to, at that point, have them swap. Have Rey go dark and have Kylo go light. And then a protagonist and antagonist totally flip, and it would completely flip the story on its head. It would be a whole new thing. You know, it could have been an interesting thing to play around with. And, like, we were talking about Blade Runner 2049 and how it was taking the original Blade Runner and flipping it on its head, where the good guy was the bad guy, and all of the stuff that was flipped around in that movie, and it worked really well. It could also work really well in Star Wars. It could have totally changed this trilogy.
Hey man, I'd be willing to. They could try anything, really.
At this stage, anything goes.
Other than what they're doing now.
Just try something.
Yeah, no, I'm with it. But I think that is what Last Jedi was exploring. That's what Luke was saying. He's like, this whole thing needs to die. It's like good, bad, whatever. Jedi, Sith, like... Sure,
and they painted themselves into a corner with this, the rebellion is back to square one again, as opposed to saying, this should all die, Jedi, Sith, da-da-da-da-da, and then Rey goes dark and Kylo goes light. Like, it would have given them so much more opportunity to explore new space, no pun intended, but instead they're like painted into a corner where it's rebellion all over again.
Pew, pew, brother. Pew, pew.
Pew, pew.
Pew!
So do you think that, like, my comment about the hunch that I have that Lucas doesn't understand how bad of a storyteller he is and how other people were able to convince him to change things up was how the good parts of the good movies were made? Because the fact that different people directed Empire and Jedi, I think, saved the hell out of that trilogy.
I think there's something to that, for sure. I for one, always thought that, like when the Disney takeover was announced, I was like, all right, yes, here it is. Now we're going to get some really good movies. They're going to get some people, oh man, they got J.J. Abrams. Fuck, it's going to be amazing. I was psyched because it was finally out of Lucas's hands,
Well, plus you saw what he did on Star Trek. I mean, my God.
He did a great job rebooting Star Trek.
Amazing.
Tremendous. And it's a shame that those movies are done now. Like,
And so you were excited about Disney picking it up, and then what's your take on it now? What's the result?
I wasn't as excited about Disney picking it up as I was the franchise, Lucas being done with the franchise,
Being in different hands.
Yeah, because I was like, all right, well, this is a chance for things to change,
Okay, so it's in different hands. Now how do you feel about it?
Well, they're not doing with it what I would hope they would do with it.
I've heard that they have been specifically instructed to not stray from Lucas's look and feel and story. I've read or heard that the people in charge of the decision making at Disney, potentially Kathleen Kennedy and or other people, have said that it has to have the same look and feel because they're afraid of a different look and feel not making as much money or whatever.
Well, but they should keep the look and feel. That's exactly what you were talking about at the beginning of the episode.
Sure, that's true. But the story doesn't need to be the same.
But I'd hope there would be some edgier and different stories going on.
So you're right. Again, the writing, dude. The writing. Like you were saying in the beginning, Chad. Like it's the the universe that was created and the look of it and all of that. It was rich. It was great. It was textured visually. All that. Like that's what's great about it. What needs to change? The writing. That's what we've agreed. You know what I mean? Like I think that's sort of like the two things that leap out at me about this whole hour-long yammer that we've just done about this. You know what I mean? Like those two things.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the creation of the universe is impressive, and Benny made the great point of it being the look and feel is kind of what makes the universe great. It wouldn't surprise me if we looked into the IMDb's of all the various writers and producers of the latest trilogy, that if they've written great things. So it might not even be that they're not good writers. It might just be that the decision makers, whoever they may be, aren't allowing good writers to write new and or innovative stuff. They're being told to write the same shit. It's like, take the original and just do it again.
Agreed. No, that's I guarantee you that's a humongous part of it, man. They're just... There's too many people interfering, and whenever you have that, it's that classic old, that cliche of, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, man. It's like, it's so true.
Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly true. Too many cooks in the kitchen, even better one. It's very true.
I think that's why Rogue One is good, because
it's a great self-contained prequel, and it's a great movie in and of itself. It's a complete story. It's all of that. It
was supposed to have been a total shit show. I don't follow any of the news or trailers or stuff because I like going in clean.
They had to reshoot the fuck out of it, right? They had to reshoot the hell out of it.
Yeah, I've heard it was the complete debacle, but the fact that they turned out what they turned out is super impressive to me. And maybe that fluke, maybe the fact that it was a shit show and they had to redo it made it a good movie. Maybe it's like the Star Wars needing to be recut, but
I want to go rewatch it right now. In fact, I think I might.
Let's just put it on as like another track on the podcast and we'll just sit and listen to it.
No, I mean, seriously, I'm leaving to go rewatch it right now. I'm going to get off.
Yeah. All right. Calls done. See you later. So what about like what we would like to see done? We've spent the last hour talking about the various ups and downs and described the saga as one big thing instead of a bunch of different movies. So where would we want to see this go? Like, okay, cool. You're given the keys to the castle. What are you going to do with it?
I think we've already answered that question as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is I think I just said it. It's that the universe that was created was great. The question is the answer almost. Like the writing needs to be good. People need to write different stories. Other people need to let them write those stories, and then those same people that are letting them write those stories need to let other people make those stories become a visual reality. That's it. So what they need to do is they need to not be afraid to do it on television either. That's the other thing.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity.
Why not have like one of those like a Hammerhead,
Yeah, totally, man. Or what about those crazy bounty hunters, man? Yeah.
Yeah, dude, a bounty hunter series?
No, like the ones from Empire, like I was always like, what do they do in their spare time?
Yeah.
The guy with like the diaper on his head.
Yeah, exactly. And the guy that looked like he had a helmet that looked like a fly, that was
so Dangar or something like that dude.
Right, exactly.
I think they should do a whole musical series with from Solo and the barge, with the little squid dude and
the singer,
the aquarium and the singer. Yeah, the two singers. They should do a whole thing with them.
Yeah, there you go.
The rise and fall of the performers. They do like the Edith Piaf thing where they become like a heroin addict or whatever, and it's just it's just brutal.
I love the little squid dude.
I said something that I don't think either of you guys heard, is that they need to stop being afraid to venture into TV to do it. Like they doing Clone Wars was brave and great in going into animation, but they should be doing something on TV like Marvel's doing, like with Daredevil and Jessica Jones and all that. It's like, come on, man.
So in a nutshell, Disney, listen up, make some TV shows, stop fucking up the movies. Mic drop.
I think maybe they got the memo because,
Yeah, it's a good point. I hope that they've gotten the memo. They canceled that movie after Solo didn't do well and they're rethinking things. I really hope they're rethinking things.
They better be, yeah.
And if the movies go to shit and all the movies are crap from here on out and they start making TV that's good, then I'm fine with it. Because in my personal opinion, I think Marvel makes good movies and I think it doesn't make good TV. Granted, I haven't watched all of it, but if the inverse was the same with Disney and the movies for Star Wars turn out to be crap and the TV turns out to be good, I'm totally cool with that. As long as there's something good, I'll skip the bad stuff.
Right.
Yeah, pick and choose like a buffet.
There you go, exactly.
Star Wars buffet at the cantina with the Squid Dude.
The Squid Dude band.
With the Squid Dude.
I love that shit.
I love it.
All right, guys.
I think that's perfect. I think show is wrapped and we're in the post game.
That sounds good. I'm Kevin Muller saying so long from the blah. And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you want to find links to the stuff we spoke about today, you can find them in the show notes in your podcast app of choice or at the website ebd.fm/6. If you have any thoughts on the show or an idea for a topic, hit us up on Twitter at ebdpod. You can find me at Molverine on Twitter. That's MOHLVERINE. Chad is at Chad Normal on Twitter. And Ben is at Jarhigo on Twitter. That's JARHEEGO. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, folks.
I am. Yeah.
Is the tunes on your end?
Yeah.
What is it?
I was compelled to listen to the track solo that I was talking about. And annoyingly, the soundtrack version, the little Squid Dude is like this high voice instead of the like smooth, low, croony voice that it is in the movie. I don't know why.
It's yeah. I don't know if you remember the song Someday by Ween, the one about him being in rehab and Tuesday is pizza day.
Of course I do, yeah.
Whenever, that's one of my favorites. Like, we listen to is pizza day and the Muppets. Oh God, I love it.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites. And we listened to the shit out of that in Joshua Tallman's Reno when we were all working together. And I went and saw them. Like, as soon as I left Nantucket after that, working with you guys, I went to a Ween show. Like, the day I landed, I scalped tickets and went to a Ween show. And awesome. Which was amazing. And I just, to this day, like, I would love to hear them sing Someday live. And I did hear them sing Someday live on 2 or 3 occasions since then. And Gene Ween, clearly doesn't like the song or is ashamed of the subject matter because he sings it in a fucked up voice. And it just ruins the fucking song. So I would love to hear him sing it in the original, like, way. Because my favorite thing about that song is him having emotion behind, like, what I perceive as, like, the rehab kind of needing to pick his life back up. And when he sings it like, someday, and you're just like, dude, you're ruining the best song you've ever fucking made.
Yeah, that's one of the things about Ween is, in some ways, they're kind of a studio band.
Yeah.
And a lot of the
do
times,
a good live show.
The material doesn't translate live, and they try to figure out a different way to do it. Sometimes it just doesn't work, But I get what you're saying.
I've been to a lot of Ween shows. Like, I've been to, I think, 12 Ween shows, and like 3 or 4 of them have been just mind blowing. So I think it is like a 1 in 4 shows is good, and the other 3 are just kind of them jerking off over their guitar solos and stuff. Yeah,
no, I think they're great. Like, I've seen them once live, and I thought they were amazing.
Which show did you go to?
But
was it the Vineyard
one? I went to see them in Vermont.
Was it the Halloween show we all went to?
I think so, yes. Yeah, it was the Halloween show, right.
Yeah, the Burlington Halloween show. Yeah, that was a great show.
Yeah, it was a really good show. I think they're great. I love Ween, but I'll stick by what I said previously. They are kind of a studio band, and sometimes their songs don't translate the same way live. Even like Voodoo Lady, which everybody loves live, and I think they did a good job of doing something that works live. But it doesn't sound like the studio version of it at all. It's a very different kind of thing, but it's a good version. It's a good different version, and I think the someday thing is just like whatever they're trying to do with it live isn't working.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard that Dean hates doing live shows or hates the way that Gene does live shows, and therefore the only way that he agrees to do the live shows if he is the only person that chooses the set lists. So I think they had a tiff where Gene would always pick like his ballad songs, Argus or, If You Could Save Yourself, all these ballady stuff, which I love. I think they're some of the best songs. But Dean fucking hates playing them. And so the only way he would agree to keep doing the tour shit was just like, I get to choose the fucking playlist. I get to choose the set list. And it's always like, Let Me Lick Your Pussy and like all this like shit that he,
Put the coke on my dick.
Has like a 20-minute solo in and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, Ween's a weird one, right? Because they have some really like heartfelt stuff.
Some of it is really just so amazing.
Like just breaks your heart. Like it's so amazing. And then they'll play Put the Coke on My Dick, and you're like,
booze me up and get me high, and you're like, all right, yep, put the coke on my dick, exactly.
Yeah, all right.
Like, yeah.
But I mean, I still appreciate that stuff because it's just so over the top.
Oh, yeah. Wash my balls with a warm red rag. Like, fuck, there's so much ridiculousess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, as silly as the country album is.
It's so fucking good.
What is it? 12 country greatest hits.
Golden
it's
country hits.
Country albums. Yeah. It's one of the best ones. It's one of the best country albums ever made.
Fucking so good.
And it's done with such, despite the fact that it's completely ridiculous.
It's done with love.
The caliber of musicians they got, national musicians they got to play with them for that, is sort of an indicator of how seriously they took it.
Yeah, for sure.
Despite the fact that it's completely ridiculous, like they really took it seriously, and it's a great album.
This may be sacrilegious, but because of how little experience I have with metal, but what I've heard is that the Metalocalypse album back in the day from that show is widely considered to be one of the better metal albums ever too, and it seems like a similar kind of thing where it's like silly as fuck but just super good. Yeah.
Well, that's I think that's the marriage of is it Brendan Smalls?
I love Brendan Smalls, man. Fuck.
Brendan Smalls being
Home Movies.
An extremely talented musician and trying to do a project that blends his like really, like he's obviously a really dedicated musician.
And
so it's like a project that blends his like extremely potent musicianship with making a funny cartoon, which is another amazing thing that he does. So yeah, it's not a surprise that he turned out some really good music, but it's also ridiculous. It's also just silly because the lyric content it has to match the cartoon, right?
Yeah, totally.